on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Back in my days, I covered a lot of crime and a lot of court cases, and there was this guy who killed his wife and dismembered her, and I was actually in his garage with her dismembered torso and didn't know it.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello, yes, welcome. It is the Self-Publishing Show with James Blatch. And at the other end of the line, oh, sorry, I spoke over you because I forgot we do that.
You're so unprofessional. Yes.
Let me try it again. It's James Blatch.
And Mark Dawson.
Wow, that was slick. How you doing, Dawes?
I'm okay. Blatch?
You're getting a little bit... Well, I'm good. You're getting a little bit, what they call it, demorp happy because you're off out, aren't you? You're off to Disney World.
Off to Disney World, yes. This time, as we record this on Thursday the 17th, in a week's time, pretty much, I'll be the day after, I'll be heading off to Gatwick with two excited children and an excited wife and flying to Disney.
So, pew, pew.
No, we're not doing Star Wars, James. My kids
You're
are too
not
young.
going to Galaxy's Edge? What do you mean too young for Star Wars?
Well, yeah, Freya's seen the first one, but she wasn't all that bothered.
What?
No, she's not that. She's more into...
She needs Uncle James to come round and instruct her in the ways of the Force.
Uncle James. God, sounds
very creepy, doesn't it?
Very, very creepy, yes. Uncle Jimmy.
Good. Well, it's been busy time. You deserve a bit of a break, and then we can we'll have a bit of fun in Vegas as well. Now, we should say we have just decided that we are going to have a joint live podcast show and free drinks event at Vegas. How cool is that?
Have we decided that?
We have. I've decided it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I had a chat with Craig yesterday. There was some messages. I think you were included on them, but you may not have read them.
I suggested it, if you remember, and then.
What did you suggest?
That we have a podcast recording in Vegas.
No, I suggested that.
And here we go.
After we did the live one, I said we should do this in Vegas.
Did you? Okay.
No, Book Lab, I do take the mickey out of you, was your idea. But you can't claim everything we ever do as secretly your idea.
I can.
Right.
You watch me.
You speak to the lawyers. Right. Anyway, whosever idea it was, we're going to be doing this in Vegas on the Wednesday night. So that is, I've got that as the 13th. On here, the 13th of November. So it's at Sam's Town Gambling and Brothel, or whatever it is. Probably libelous.
I don't think it's a brothel.
No, whatever it is in Vegas.
Casino. I think that's the word you're looking for.
I think they call it a gambling hall.
They call them resorts, I think.
Yeah, but anyway, it's whatever happens there stays there, apart from this podcast episode, which will get broadcast. So we're going to do that probably at 6 o'clock will be the broadcast time, the time we start the show. And if you get there after the day's events, if you're going to 20 Books Vegas this year, head off to the balcony area, the balcony that overlooks the strange animatronic goings on in the bar in the middle. We are going to be setting up there. You'll get a free drink and you can get to take part in our show. I mean, it's going to be slightly chaotic. I think everybody drinking and watching us chat. We don't know who the guests are yet, but it went so well, Nick, we thought we would do this again.
We should get Ricardo Fayette and David Cochran.
Yeah, that worked well last time. Time to mix things up. We'll find someone else. And we should also say we are heading rapidly towards our 200th episode.
We are, yes, in 4 episodes' time. So that's going to be an interesting one. It's funny, hard to believe that. How many years is that then? So about 4 years we've been doing this for.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I think we did 3 or 4 at the beginning, but yeah, more or less 4 years. You say 4 episodes' time, but this is going to be 197. So actually, yeah,
that's
3 episodes'
4.
time.
197, 198, 199. You haven't had this episode yet.
I would say the other way of saying it is 2 episodes' time, because you've got 198 and 199 between us, and then it's that episode.
Oh, I suppose so. Yeah.
But either way,
potato.
Just so people know, it's going to be released on the 15th of November. That is the scheduled release date for the 200th episode.
That's if I can put up with you for long enough.
Yeah, well, that goes both ways.
We might end at 197 at this rate.
Let me just welcome our Patreon supporter. We did record an episode a couple of days ago, so not surprisingly, there's just one new Patreon supporter, and that is Diddy Miller. What a great name. Thank you, Diddy, very much indeed for going to patreon.com/self-publishing show and becoming a supporter of this here podcast. Right, today, Mark, We are talking to a big beast in the world of self-publishing. We are talking to somebody who is a prolific author, a prolific marketer, and most of all, a prolific seller of books. And I know you are a bit of a fan of Amanda Lee.
I am, yes. She sells an enormous amount of books, and in, I would say, well, a smaller genre than I write in, certainly. So she writes kind of, I think, cozy, witchy, mystery type books. And I'm saying that without having read any of her books, which is, I know, is indefensible. But she is extremely prolific, and I hadn't met her before until we went to Nick, and I remember the first night actually. Was called over by someone, and she said, "Oh, hi, Mark. I'm Amanda Lee." I'm like, "Oh, right, hello." And she's very forthright. She comes from Detroit. She used to be a reporter, news reporter, and that's how she explains her huge word counts. She'll do 9,000 words a day, and it's just a question of, it's discipline for her, and that was her job. You can't really moan to an editor that you haven't filed your story because you didn't get the words in. She's kind of taken that discipline that she learned when she was a news reporter and has brought that across to her new business as a writer, and has this remarkable prolific work rate, and it really is benefiting from that. I mean, she's making an enormous amount of money. Probably one of the top selling authors in the world, I would have thought, in terms of actual revenue generated.
Yeah, great to hear from her, which we'll do in a moment. I think that can work both ways, having been a journalist, because you're always being pushed on word count. If you work for a newspaper, you always want more words, and the editor's always saying, no, we're cutting that. You've got more column inches disappear as the week goes on. So you develop a talent for telling stories in short, in a few words, not more words. So I think she's done a really good job of taking the discipline of putting your bum on the seat and getting words down, but also turn that into longer form storytelling, which I found a little bit difficult at the beginning. Yeah,
no, exactly. It's that daily discipline, and no such thing as writer's block and stuff like that. It's as I said, I did a talk yesterday to some kids in Salisbury, and one of them asked me, how do you deal with writer's block? And this is the kind of the Lee Child answer is, well, there's no such thing as plumber's block or truck driver's block. These things don't happen. That's the job, and you've got to get the words in. And Amanda just does that extremely effectively.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, look, we're going to have a chat with you off the back of the interview with Amanda. And I know you've been into a school recently, so I want to hear about that and that visit. So do stick around for this great interview with Amanda, and then Mark and I'll be back for a chat.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Amanda, welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. How delightful to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
And I can't believe you can spare the time, because we are going to be talking about productivity, and your figures have blown me away when I see the level of writing and word count. We're going to come on to that in a moment. But first of all, why don't you just give us the skinny on who Amanda Lee is?
Oh, well, I write cozy mysteries, and they kind of some of them skew toward urban fantasy. So I've been publishing since 2011, so I've been at it a while.
You have. And have you been traditionally published initially, or were you self-published from the beginning?
No. I was a reporter before this. So, I mean, I always wrote on deadline, but I was not, writing books.
Okay, Amanda. So cozy mystery is your genre, and you say you were a reporter before, so writing novels, was it something you had an ambition for from a young age, or just something that came to you?
Yeah, I started writing novels when I was a kid and whatnot, but back when I went to college, it wasn't feasible really to make a living writing novels unless you somehow really lucked into it. So I needed a job that was going to pay the bills. And we thought at the time journalism would be a nice fit, but the journalism field has really taken a lot of hits. So it really wasn't that good of a choice. And by the time self-publishing came around, I was looking for a change anyway, and it just kind of happened at the right time. So
yeah, it did. And you were a prolific reader beforehand, were you? Did you read a lot?
Oh yeah, I read 3 to 5 books a week.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on then to the substance of this discussion is your productivity. Just tell me how many words you write each week, month, etc.
Well, I tend to do 9,000 words a day, 5 days a week. Sometimes I add a little more depending, but I really hit 45,000 words a week, which if you go the standard 4 weeks, that's 180,000 a month, although I usually skew slightly higher than that because it's not really a full 4 weeks.
45,000 words a week. And this is not you racing towards a deadline, because a lot of people can suddenly churn out 15,000 words in a day if they need to. This is the regular you sitting down every week writing.
Yeah, no, I'm 6 months ahead. So, the book I'm writing right now, I believe, comes out in October or November. I would have to look at my schedule. It's one of those two. I know the one I start on Tuesday comes out in November. So
you're
yeah, no.
you're well organized on this front. You have a kind of spreadsheet or a project, your project management.
Actually, I don't know if people would think I'm that organized. I do everything by hand. I have a little notebook that I just write stuff down in. That I mean, I don't know how organized this is. I have a list and I write down the words of each novel and I cross them off and
Wow.
just go.
And do you write one novel at a time? You write sequentially?
Yes. I have found that if I try to jump from novel to novel, it doesn't go as well for me. I'm better. I'm hyper efficient, so it's better for me to focus on one thing and go through it. And what was really actually slowing me down was the editing, because I zone out and I can't stand it. And so I have modified my editing. I used to write completely through and then spend several days editing, but that was like a depressing couple days editing for me. So now because I used to actually write 12,000 to 15,000 words a day and then have to spend a whole, 3 to 5 days editing. But now I do the 9,000 words a day writing, and then I edit 9,000 words a day too. It's a different 9,000 words. It's from an entirely different manuscript.
To give your brain a bit of
Yeah,
variety.
and it works out better for me that way.
Okay. So when you sit down, you write your 9,000 words. Obviously, you know what book you're working on, and you're working sequentially in that. Do you sort of sit there and aim for the 9,000? It's not like you sit there and think, I'm going to write for 5 hours or something. No,
I sit down and say I'm going to write 3 chapters, and my chapters tend to be between 2,800 and 3,200 words, and it pretty much equals out to 9,000. I mean, I don't force the issue. If I were to be at, 8,975, I'm not adding an extra 25 words in a new chapter, but it just kind of works out to my natural writing thing is 2,800 to 3,200 words a chapter, so I do 3 chapters a day.
And how long does that take you?
About 3.5 hours.
For the 9,000 for the chapter?
Yeah, it takes me about an hour to write 3,000 words.
Okay. So you write fast. I mean, not only are you putting the hours in, but you write fast. And how are you writing? A Scrivener or Word or?
It depends on if I'm writing at home or if I'm writing at Starbucks, because I do a lot of writing at Starbucks because I play Pokemon and I like to spin the stop there while I'm writing. So I have my phone open and every 5 minutes I'm spinning the stop. And then when I'm at Starbucks, I usually do 2 chapters a day at Starbucks. So I'm there for 2 hours, which is 2 full venti green teas. And they know me. I mean, the minute I come in through, they're like, Amanda, venti green tea. I mean, so I sit there for 2 hours and do those 2 chapters. And I usually write 1 chapter before I leave. When I'm in Starbucks, I write on my iPad because it's just easier to carry around. And when I'm at home, I write on my Mac. I don't write in Scrivener. I've actually never really bonded with the software. I don't know what it is. I write in Word on my laptop, and then I write in Pages on my iPad, and then I just transfer it from the iCloud drive into Word when I'm done for the day.
Okay. And you You obviously have a keyboard with your iPad.
Yes, I have the smart keyboard, and honestly, I think it made me faster because for some reason my fingers just fly over that sucker. I write even slightly faster. I'm not like not a huge amount, but I write pretty fast on my iPad. I mean, I've even started just traveling with the iPad because you know how it's a pain with your laptop and
Yeah.
whatnot. You got to get it out for security and whatnot. The iPad is just easier and lighter, and you can pretty much do everything I need to do. Because when I travel, I try to set it up so that's a week I take off if I can help it, because I like to hang out with my friends, and I don't want to be the person holed up in their room writing. So I tend to schedule those weeks off. But my philosophy is, why did I work so hard to get 6 months ahead if I can't take
Yeah.
a little time here or there off?
There's definitely got to be some
So-
payback. Although a lot of people, of course, listen to this who are working 9-to-5 jobs and dreaming of being in a position where their writing pays for a living, do love the idea of going to Starbucks every day and being recognised and sitting down and writing for a living. That is a lovely thing. But also, it's a lot of work. A lot of thinking goes into that. I mean, when you sit down every day, are you writing out from a plot you've got, or are you pantsing it as you go?
Yeah, I outline. Do I have a notebook? Yeah. So this is the book I'm finishing up right now. It's gonna look like gibberish, but I outline a couple sentences for each chapter.
Oh, okay, that's there. We were looking at chapters. So for the people watching on YouTube, they can see that. Some people would just be listening to this, but what Amanda's showing us is a notepad.
Oh yeah.
With some...
You're looking at. I outline each chapter by hand. Each series has its own notebook. I know where each chapter needs to get, and I'm kind of a half pantser, half plotter. I write down the beats where each chapter has to get, and then I kind of let it get there however it wants. I know where I have to be by the end of the chapter, and then just let it go.
And do you deviate from that plot at all? Does sometimes your writing just take you off and surprise you?
Yes, I will. If I have better ideas, and then usually if I have a better idea, I actually hand write it in the margins and whatnot, so I can, if I need to go back, I can see where I made this jump in case when I'm going back editing, all of a sudden it's like, where did this come from? So I know, because to keep going fast, I'm not the sort of person, if I make a plot change, I don't go back and change what I've already written. I make the note of it, and then the changes don't come in until I'm editing, because it just streamlines the process more to keep going forward with the change I've made versus going back and losing a bunch of time, maybe days, trying to add it into chapters I've already read. I just saved that for the editing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm at sort of that stage myself now, just the end of my first novel, I should say, and not anything like the numbers you've got. But I'm exactly at that point now where I'm wondering how, because I've just rewritten a scene that means that a scene 4 scenes ago needs to be rewritten. And as I actually had that thought this afternoon, do I stop, go back and do that, or do I just push on? Because I'm right at the end of the book. And I think probably the efficient thing is to get to the end of the book, get to the end of the draft, and then go back and do those changes. But you do need some level of organisation.
Yeah, I used to go back, but I really don't now. I make notes and go forward. And most of the time, I stick fairly close to my outline. But there are times when I'm in the middle of a book and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is such a better idea. And, so you just go with it. But then I just turn back around and wait till the editing process. And because I always have the notebook sitting next to me when I'm working on it, and then just go back and do it that way.
Okay, so all this productivity, Amanda, how many books have you published?
Oh, see, it's more than 150. I think less than 200. I've got, the second I can put something up for pre-order, I put it on pre-order. So I was at 150 at a certain point last year, so I've got to be getting close to 200. Because I read under 2 names. So I read under Amanda M. Lee and Lily Harper Hart. So, and each one of them publishes at least 1 book a month.
Okay.
So
how many words are your average books?
For Lily Harper Hart, it's 60,000 words a book. For Amanda M. Lee, it's about between 90 and 95,000 is where I've pretty much settled.
Okay. So you are you're getting to the end. I mean, that's the other thing about what you're doing here. You're sitting down and writing every day, but there's a production line, of course, in terms of the publishing process. When do you do that? And that must also have the same level of intensity. You must be every month getting a new cover, getting blurb, all the rest of it.
Well, I do my own covers.
Okay.
I like to mess around with Photoshop, but I do those while binge watching something on Netflix generally. And I have so many covers now that I literally have 200 covers. I have series plotted out that I will not be able to get to for years. So I do that. I have a VA who does things that I don't want to do, like proofing my audio. And she also does some other proofreading for me. She helps moderate my reading group. The audio for me is listening to the audio is the big time suck. So when you take that out, because I just don't have 9 to 15 hours, depending on the length of the book, to sit down and listen to my own words read back to me. And I also hate that. So, I do have a VA who does some of that. And I also have found that I really only do the one massive editing pass on my book, and then I hand it off to other people I have a line editor and 3 proofreaders who handle the proofreading for me.
When you
So
say proofing the audiobooks, is that a VA who's sitting there with a copy of the manuscript, checking that it's being accurately dictated or narrated?
yes.
Okay. Is that
Yes.
something? It's a little under experience for me because I haven't done anything like this. Is that something that's normal, or proofing an audiobook? Or
I don't know that everyone does it, but the big thing for me is that a lot of people like to whisper sync their books, and you can't have too many deviations or Amazon won't whisper sync them, and you get more sales on audio through the whisper sync, so you always want them whisper synced. So it's worth paying her to sit there for the 9 hours to make sure they get whisper synced, because I'm working really hard on building up my audio. So, and it's a very long process. So,
okay, fair enough. It's just an area that I'm not familiar with. So you mentioned the covers. I've just been fiddling in the background and getting some of your books up and having a look at it. I had a look, obviously, before the interview. Your covers are really beautiful. Do you draw those?
no, I can't draw. I photo manipulate them.
But these are almost illustrations.
So, yeah, I can photo manipulate really well. I have a publishing thing with account with Shutterstock, and basically and then sometimes, because it's like adult coloring, I like to just fiddle, and sometimes I will see something I really like and buy it and then just fiddle with it for months, in like when I'm watching TV, and I will actually have a series idea pop up
As a
out
result of
of.
the illustration.
Yes. So yeah, I like messing around with the Photoshop stuff. Some of my other writer friends think I have a problem because I'll be messaging them what I've been working on. And they're like, "You have 200 covers. Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's a sickness. I can't stop myself." I'm kind of a control freak though, so I like having control of it myself, and I don't always play well with others, and I hear all these other people having certain nightmare things with their covers that they want, so I just like having the control.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think they look amazing, and obviously there's a little pet talent of yours among your many talents, Amanda. Is that so?
Well, to be fair, I was trained on Photoshop for journalism, so I can also actually create book trailers if I want, because I was trained on like Final Cut Pro and whatnot, and I'm very good at it. But I found book trailers to be kind of useless, so I don't waste the time on that. But I absolutely love screwing around with Photoshop, and if I can't do something, thanks to YouTube, all you have to do is go type it in, and there's 100 different people there who wanting to teach you a skill. So a lot of times, if I don't have anything going on, I will go watch a 20-minute tutorial on something I don't know how to do on Photoshop and let them teach me.
Yeah, I mean that's how I use Photoshop. is reaching for YouTube, and is remarkably good for that. Okay, well, you mentioned marketing there, and let's talk about marketing there. So, what are you doing in terms? I mean, right from the beginning, was it 2011? I think you said you started, which is a
Yeah.
pretty good time to start in self-publishing. A lot of people found it a little bit easier at that point to get visibility in sales. Did you start well?
I didn't hit it till my fourth book, which was my first witch book, which was kind of a fluke because at the time I just decided I wanted to turn my family into witches, and all my family are witches in there, and they think it's funny. So back then there weren't a lot of options. They were like, what was it, that Kindle Fire Daily, I think, and I think ENT might have actually been around then. There weren't a lot of options, and I really didn't even attempt to start advertising, I don't think, until 2014. I just got lucky. The witch books took off, and then they dragged everything else with it. And I had absolutely horrible covers when I started because I didn't know what I was doing, and I made the mistake of that journalism editing. I tapped on my journalism friends to edit. That's not the same as book editing. So I made a lot of mistakes, but back then you could get away with making mistakes and rebound. It's not the same today. So I'm glad I have my team in place. As for marketing today, I mostly rely on new releases as my marketing boost. I spend about $5,000 a month on AMS ads. Every once in a while, I get a bug up my butt, and we'll go do BookBub ads, but I don't get very much from them. And occasionally, I'll do a Facebook ad, but mostly it's AMS ads, and I only spend about $5,000 a month on them.
Yeah, quite a complex set of campaigns. And how much time and effort do you put into those?
I just set them up and let them go. I'm pretty lazy about marketing. I let the new releases do it for me. I am not someone, it's never going to make sense to me to spend more than you make on advertising, which I see a lot of people doing, and because they think somehow it's going to catch up at some point. For me, it's all about the profit margin. So yeah, I just don't overdo the advertising. At a certain point, I might have to, because as we all know, the market's constantly in flux. But right now, it's still working that my new releases work as advertising. And every time I release a new book in a series, it bumps up the backlist. So, although I honestly, I lucked out because I started at a time when it was easier to get visibility, and I built a very big readership back before everything was glutted, and they've stuck with me. I mean, you get the occasional attrition and whatnot, but for the most part, my fans read like pretty much everything I write.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what's happening here. So your new release gets a very natural boost from a legion of Amanda Lee fans out there.
Yeah, everything I write under Amanda M. Lee pretty much debuts in the top 100 now, and actually, the Lily Harper Hart stuff has started debuting in the top 100 too. It doesn't get as low as my Amanda M. Lee stuff, but it is now getting in the top 100. So,
and the just to finish on the marketing side of it, did you start with a mailing list? You said you had a big readership early on. Did you capture them into a mailing list at any point? Is that something you do?
I was an idiot. I didn't start a mailing list till 2014 either. My mailing list is completely organic. I've never once run a list builder. I don't like them. I'd rather have a smaller list of diehard fans. So my list is honestly only like 9,000 people for Amanda M. Lee and 2,000 people for Lily Harper Hart.
Okay. But are they high quality?
And when you compare that to other people, that's nothing.
Yeah. But everyone does it a little bit differently,
but they're all
don't they?
Organic.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so where you are now, I mean, there's no question about it. I'm sure debuting in the top 100 each time, you have a very comfortable living. I imagine from your reporter days,
yeah, I do pretty well.
A kind of life-changing amount of money.
No, trust me, I never thought. Yeah, no, I do pretty well. I have nothing to complain about. That way, and but I mean, I still put in the work. I've seen other people who hit it big with 1 or 2 books, and then they don't write again for a year, and then they can't figure out what happened. Whereas I don't take anything for granted. You know, I'm always working. Once we're done here, I'm going to Starbucks. So,
Yeah, right.
um,
And do you think that's that sort of because lots of people who are successful have a little bit of self-doubt and just like worry that the tap's suddenly going to be turned off, or the imposter syndrome that they're going to be found out, they're going to wake up one morning, it's all going to be over. Do you think there's a little bit of that driving is one of the reasons that drives you every day to write more and get the next books out?
I think it's more that I didn't make a lot of money as a reporter, and I like my lifestyle much more now, but I don't I don't foresee that self-publishing is going to be this open cascade of money for people for a really long time. So I want to make sure that I never have to go back to a day job. So I actually am investing my money. I have a plan for getting a place in New Orleans for the winter eventually, but I mean, I don't want a mortgage or anything. I'm doing it all with cash. So I invest. I try to be pretty smart with my money. I am not just throwing money out the window on anything other than all the Star Wars stuff you see behind me. I'm pretty, I'm pretty careful, and I have a financial advisor, and I have a certain amount of money every month going into a retirement fund every single month, no matter what. And it's just I want to be smart about this because everyone dreams of getting to this, and you don't want to lose it. And I have seen people lose it, and I don't want to be the person who decides that just to take a year off because it was going well last year, because everything in this business changes every few months. So I don't, I just want to be on top of the changes. And plus, I really do enjoy writing. So
Yeah, so the writing, the kind of motivation to write is what I'm quite interested in, because it does take a lot of application to do the amount that you do, and there's a sort of an intensity to it. So in terms of the stories themselves, I've got a couple of questions about this. One is, how do you keep them fresh? How do you keep yourself fresh and interested when you're doing quite similar, I guess, quite similar stories one after the other?
well, it's always hard because you don't want the mysteries to be exactly the same. So I'm one of those people that I love those Dateline shows on Netflix and whatnot, and on the weekends I'll pop those in, and I keep a notebook around, and I like jot down not the story itself, but like if there's an interesting way the individual was caught, or if there's an interesting motivation, or if there's an interesting like business, intrigue area. I always jot all those down in a notebook. So when I'm getting ready to start plotting a mystery, I then start looking through, and I'm like, what do I like in here? What do I like in here? And I'm still on top of all the journalism stuff in this area because all my friends are journalists in this area, and I still get the paper all the time, and we always have really weird crime here. So I'm always on top of that, and I always get inspiration from, I mean, we recently had this clerk who managed to accidentally get in. She rode Donald Trump's coattails into the clerk's office here, and she was nuts. She would put tinfoil on herself so the smart readers couldn't get in her brain.
Okay.
And she was doing all types of weird stuff. And so she gave me a lot of inspiration for a book I've been outlining. And usually I just see something on the news and I'm like, oh, that would be a good idea. And like everything that went on with that fire festival. When you saw those documentaries about the fire festival, I'm like, oh, I'm doing a witch festival set on my island. And, so I get a lot of inspiration from television, which is weird, but
I mean, that genre has exploded. These real life, the documentaries, The Staircase on Netflix, of course, the Avery story from somewhere in the Midwest.
Yes.
I mean, I have to say, John Dyer and I absorb all of this. We always say to each other, I've just watched another brilliant series, and they've exploded. We've had Ted Bundy, of course, a big film in the UK at the moment about him. So you seem to be...
Yeah, and I watched that. They have a 4-part series on Netflix on Ted Bundy, which I watched. You don't really go the serial killer route in cozy mysteries.
No.
That's a little too dark for the readership.
Ted Bundy is quite a dark story.
I'm actually... I'm actually fascinated with serial killers. So, I mean, I watch Criminal Minds and stuff, so I even watch those occasionally just to, and you don't steal the entire episode, but if something interesting happens into it, it always sparks in your memory. What if it was like just like this character, but this happened?
Yeah.
So I just have a constant notebook that I'm jotting ideas down, and when it comes time,
I
and
think this is the reporter in you, because I used to be a news reporter as well, and I always remember little details. Sometimes they're quite horrible little details that just stick in your mind. And one thing, I wonder if you remembered this as well, that there was an astronaut, a female astronaut, who decided to murder
the
her,
one who wore the diaper.
and she wore her diaper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
detail that I remembered. She drove a long way, I think, down the East Coast, down to Florida, to murder her husband's her love rival, and she wore her astronaut diaper so she didn't have to stop en route. Now, that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and I have back in my days I covered a lot of crime and a lot of court cases, and like there was this guy here named Stephen Grant who killed his wife and dismembered her, and I was actually in his garage with her dismembered torso and didn't know it at the time.
Wow.
However, the part of his story after he was caught was he took her body in his children's sled, and it was because it was snowing out, and threw the body parts around a local park, and the sled took off on him down a hill at one point, and it's the middle of the night, and he's having to chase the sled full of his wife's body parts down a hill. So you hear certain things like that. So I actually used him as the inspiration, and people who live around here are always like, "Oh my God, that's Stephen Grant,"
They spot
and
it.
so yeah, I still follow the news pretty closely, but for cozies, you don't want to go too dark. Like you can never
No.
have a school shooting
No.
in a cozy, and
But there is
we
something.
have to be really careful with any sexual violence in a
Yes.
cozy as well.
Yeah, I understand that's not why people are reading the book, but it's a very interesting area to me, I'm sure to you as well, as to why some crime stories take off and others don't. And I've been in newsrooms, and sometimes it's difficult to work out. Sometimes you know exactly what it is. There's just the right photograph of the young girl or something looking wide-eyed and innocent. Just something sparks the imagination. And suddenly, I remember being in California at the time the Scott Peterson murders happened. Do you remember
Right.
that with the body? And everyone was gripped
Yes.
by it. And I was on holiday at the time, thinking, why is everyone following every ounce of this story? How many murders were there in LA last night? But
Well, it's because she was very pregnant and due to give birth like any day, and he was I think it's different when the suspect is attractive too. It's like with Ted Bundy.
yeah,
He's not my personal cup of tea, but apparently back in the 70s, women everywhere were swooning all over him.
Yeah.
And I think you look at someone like who was the guy who dressed up like the clown and killed all the guys? He looked like a killer. Ted Bundy was
Okay.
charming. You could disarm. John Wayne Gacy.
Oh,
So
yes,
he dressed
yeah.
up like a clown and killed all those young boys, but he looked like a killer. Ted Bundy looked like your average guy next door. He volunteered his time at a suicide helpline, so I always find all that stuff interesting.
So with the level of, I think this is a really interesting discussion for people who are constantly looking for ideas and how to get those sparks and how to make them. I think Mark Dawson does a bit of this as well. He reads newspapers, goes back over old stories and tries to find those little quirky things that have happened to put into his own thrillers. But so with your level of writing and your level of production, are you able to take note of what is starting to take off in your particular market and adapt your books around that? Is this something you do, or do you just simply
I don't really
stick to...
write to trend.
Okay.
No, I don't write to trend. So I am a firm believer, and I would never. Other people who can write to trend and stay on top of it, more props to them. But I'm more of a, I write what's true to my brand and stick to it. Over the long haul, I think a lot of people can hit, like those supernatural academies are hitting really hard right now, but you can make a lot of money from them right now, but then it'll be like, the billionaire biker or the sadomasochistic 50 Shades of Grey dude. Eventually they run their course, and then I would rather have my backlist be more solid, if not going through the roof, than because what if you make all this money on, a certain trend, and then what happens when that trend dries up? So I really try to avoid writing to trend. I do write to market, but I avoid trends as much as possible.
How much contact do you have with your readers?
I have a very active reader group, and I try to keep up on my messages and emails as much as possible. Sometimes that's not always possible because I get 30 to 50 messages a day. Some of it is quite easy. I can just point them towards my website because a lot of times they are just looking for the reading order list. So you just point them toward the website. But occasionally you get a few weird people. Um, and then, but most of the time, I mean, I'm in my reader group every day. They're very active though. But so if I had to go to a memorial service Monday, they entertained themselves for the entire day. So they put up bacon memes because I always have a running joke about bacon in one of my books. And, I'm a Star Wars fanatic. So they put up Star Wars memes. Yeah, they totally entertained themselves for the entire day.
So you have your own little
So,
community there. Are you in danger of having a Comic-Con event after you? Because that does happen with enthusiastic reader groups.
yeah, I don't know that I would want that. I mean, if I go to a Comic-Con, it's because I want to stalk people.
Yes, you don't want to be the person
I want to
being.
see. Yeah. I'm not. I like writers conferences because I like hanging out with other writers. Like Nink is my absolute favorite, and Mark. I met Mark there, um, and then I've developed a very strong reader group. A lot of it is other cozy authors like Annabelle Chase and Bella Falls and Lindsay Hall, and we all just were in New Orleans together in March. So we do a couple trips a year, and then a couple of us, like Leanne Dobbs and Pamela Kelly and Bella Falls, and I are going to be in Salem, Massachusetts this year for the run up to Halloween.
Wow, that's a
So,
very cool place to be in there. Well,
we had to book our hotel rooms in the haunted hotel a full year in advance because it's so hard to get in there.
yeah. Well, you might not get out alive, so I hope it was worth it.
Yeah.
Good. Well, look, Amanda, it's been really interesting talking to you, particularly about the ideas. I don't know where to go with the productivity because basically you just sit there and you write 3,500 words in an hour. Is that right?
Pretty much. The only tips I can give is one thing I do that I think saves a lot is when I am, because I'm writing 11 different series at once. When I am done with a book in a series, I immediately do the outline for the next book. So I make note of where it is in the timeline for the year. So it does save time in that I don't have to go back and double check all this stuff. I know that it's summer. This just happened in the last book, and this is where they're at in their relationship. And that is a big time saver. So
Yeah.
I do recommend that. And I also, the other thing, I never stop in the middle of a chapter. I always finish the chapter because when you start the next day, I don't have to remember where I was in that chapter, reread it, re-go through it again, get caught in that editing loop. I always finish the chapter no matter what.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a big time saver too.
Yeah, I heard another tip the other day is when you do stop when you're enjoying it. When you're coming up to a bit you're looking forward to writing, because then for those of us who have to sort of find the time during the day, it's a much easier process to go to open it up and start writing rather than stop when you're.
Well, yeah, it is. This is my full-time job, so I do treat it like a job and I get stuff done. When I was still a reporter, I was working 80 hours a week, 40 as a reporter and 40 doing this for more than a year because I wanted to make sure, because once you get off the journalism train, now there's no getting back in. If you're out now. And I wanted to make sure the money was going to hold before I actually quit. So yeah, that was a very rough year, but I'm not sad I did it because it worked out, well for me. So, yeah, now I can basically set my schedule. And this week, usually I don't have anything get in the way, but this week I had a bunch of stuff pile up. I had to go to my grandfather's memorial. My mom's coming Saturday, and I got to get this house in order. And then I had this, and I had a massage, and then my pool opens Monday. So I'm not quite getting as much done this week as I do on a normal week, but that doesn't happen that often for me. It just, this week it was like 8 things piled in all at once. But generally, a normal week is I get my 9,000 writing in, and I usually have it done by noon or 1 in the afternoon. Then I go play Pokemon for an hour, and then I go home and do my editing, and I'm usually completely done. And I take my time editing and whatnot. I'm usually completely done by 3 and can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Although in the summer that'll switch because I'll spend 3 hours in the pool every day that I possibly can. In Michigan, we take advantage of that pool as much as we possibly can. So the editing will be moved till I'm done in the pool before I go to bed. It'll still get done.
Living the dream.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'd live in that pool year round if I could. I love that pool.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. Well, look, Amanda, I want to say thank you so much indeed for joining us and sharing some of those insights with us. I'm going to take some inspiration from that amount of... I'm meticulous in my spreadsheet about my words. I do run 2 businesses, so I'm quite busy, but I thought I was doing really well. I write somewhere between 25 and 30,000 words a month, and I was really pleased with myself. And then I started talking to you. And that's like 3 days.
Well, it's not something I don't think most people can. You have to work up to it until it's your normal.
Yeah.
Just having a day of 15,000 is great when you got to get that stuff done. But I almost think it's better if you go down to 9,000, but you can stick to it, or even 5,000 words a day and stick to it and have that steadiness versus, 1,000 words here, 1,000 words here. And all of a sudden you've got to get 15,000 words in one day. That's a lot of stress that I don't necessarily think is, good for the creative process, but everyone has their own thing they do. So.
Okay. Right. Well, let's double down on that. Let's get that word count up. By the time we meet in Nink, I'm gonna have a better average for you, Amanda.
All right.
Good. And by the way, in Nink, just before, we are going to the new Star Wars park, so I expect to see you there.
Oh, are you? I don't know when I'm going to be able to get to the new Star Wars park. I haven't figured it out yet because my fall is pretty full of travel with Nink and Salem, and
Well, you need to get on a flight a day early.
So I don't know yet.
I think the Nink starts on something like the Wednesday. I think the Monday or Tuesday we're going to be in Star Wars land.
Oh, see now, my little group does Nink Sunday to Sunday.
Okay.
So we spend Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday getting massages, getting drunk, hanging out on the beach. So before anyone actually shows up.
Well, you need to be at Galaxy's Edge doing those things on the Monday and Tuesday.
I don't think I can talk most of my other cozy authors. I'm the only Star Wars freak, so they're not going to go. But
I'm going to introduce you to a couple. Okay. Amanda, thank you so much indeed. Looking forward to seeing you in the autumn.
Problem.
And thank you so much for joining us.
You too. Thanks.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go, Amanda Lee. So very interesting hearing from somebody who's getting pretty much everything right. Actually, I did an interview yesterday as we're standing here with Lindsay Baroka, and who also sells a shed load of books. And Lindsay puts it really down to having a big, loyal audience who are there waiting for your next book. And Michelangelo and others in the industry will tell you that, and in fact, Lindsay repeated this yesterday, that the number one way of marketing your previous books is to write your next book. And I think Amanda and her and quite a few people in that, although they're quite different genres, who in that sort of level of selling are doing that. They're getting their product out regularly. They're servicing their fans.
Excuse me?
Didn't sound quite right, but you know what I mean. Fan service, I think, is a thing. If it's not quite the thing you're thinking of,
it is a thing. Yes, no, that's absolutely right. No, and of course, there's another author who sells a few books who you might know who does the same thing. So yeah, it is important to get the books out there. So yeah, I'll have probably do 4 this year. That's kind of a standard year for me. Is 4 novels. I'd be happy with that.
Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what. In the next episode, I'm going to update you on my novel situation. Not my unique situation, but my novel situation.
I can hardly wait.
Yes, I know you're. I think other people are quite interested. I get a few messages.
I think they are. Yes,
every day.
They are.
Okay, look, let's talk about your school visit. Now, this is interesting for me because these live, real-world events. Not that long ago, they were quite a big deal for people, these blog tours and appearances and so on. And over the last couple of years, I certainly sense, I have no personal experience of this, that people are thinking that now, certainly when you put a lot of time and effort and travel and expenses into it, it's not really paying back in the same way as a good session at a computer and sort of digital marketing is doing. Children's authors are an exception to that, who often say that going into schools is very helpful for them. And also the other part of it, it's a really good thing for your soul, I think, for you as a person to do, to go in and in the real world, talk to people. But you've been into a school, so tell us how it went and what you got out of it.
It was good, yeah. So there's a Salisbury Literary Festival on at the moment, and my daughter's school is kind of part of that. And they had, to go back to what you said, they had a children's author go in and speak to the girls. The girls at Freya's age, and they all, they bought books, and Freya brought back these books, and the author had signed them "Happy Birthday" because it's Freya's birthday that day as well. And then Freya was up late last night and early this morning reading that book to herself, which is great. She's getting to the stage now where she likes to read herself. So that was great. And obviously this author has probably sold 60 books, which that's not bad. It's not scalable, but it won't be a bad afternoon's work for her. But for me, it wasn't about selling books. I was talking to sixth formers, so 16, 17-year-olds, 15 as well, I suppose, as well in that mix. And it was mostly about how I publish and independent publishing and digital marketing and all that kind of stuff. And it was interesting. There was about 250 children there. I was interviewed by the English teacher, and I asked them at the start how many people read on a device, and I would say 10% read on a device, 90% didn't. And that anecdotally, it is well known that children and kind of teenagers still prefer to read in print, which is not necessarily what you'd expect, given that that's a digital generation. But that was the case, and you can look at that one of two ways. You can either look at it and think, well, that's great. Think of how much further we've got to go in terms of the audience that we can tap, or you could look at it the other way and go, that's quite worrying, because when all the people who are reading on Kindles, move on, who will take up the slack? I certainly cleave towards the first of those two possible outcomes. But it was interesting, and I didn't get many questions. Had a few questions, but mostly from the teachers. And then at the end of it, 3 of the English teachers came up to me and said, "I've finished a novel. What do I do now?" So that was quite interesting. And I've a couple of nice tweets from teachers who were there and found it interesting. Had perhaps been heading towards the agent and traditional publisher route, and didn't know what was possible. Again, we've mentioned this before.
Yeah, most people
don't assume that what we know, listeners to this podcast and watchers on the YouTube channel, what we know is not representative of what most people know. We are still in the vanguard, which I find, well, from an SPF perspective, we should probably be looking to buy a Caribbean island quite soon, because there's a huge amount of authors who don't know anything about what we do. So that's great. And and also that works for authors too, in the sense that the readership is still growing. We're probably 30%, 70% in terms of the digital print split at the moment. So that means that we've got, I've sold a couple of million books. There's a lot more readers out there who've never heard of me before, have no idea who I am. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, really exciting, huge area for growth. And again, mentioning Lindsay Baroka interview I did yesterday, she launched a new pen name, and she did it anonymously because there wasn't a crossover not much crossover with the existing audience, and she launched it successfully and made money from it. And it was a couple of years ago, in this environment that people were telling you and me, sometimes on Facebook messaging, oh, it's all over, you can't do it anymore. You were lucky you got in at the beginning. That doesn't seem to be the case.
No.
As maybe I'll find out when we talk about my book next week. Look, that's it for this episode. And good. Yeah, I would just say about teenagers not asking questions. I've done quite a lot of school talks over the years to the BBC and then the BBFC, and you probably did them as well at the BBFC. And I'd often, that particular age group, that kind of 15, 16, 17, 18, if it's school rather than college, they'd often sit there slumped, looking bored as anything, which is disconcerting during the entire talk.
There was some slumping.
But then afterwards, quite a few of them come up to you quite lively and chat to you and say that was really good. And you just think, well, you could have given me a little bit of facial feedback during the session. But
I had none at all, but it was fine. I was quite happy just to blather on for 45 minutes.
They probably went home and told they probably didn't tell their parents about it, because children just say fine when you ask them how school was. Okay, good. That's it for this week. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks to Mark. We're going to be back next week. We have a interview next week with Jeff Wheeler, which is going to be a good one. So we'll see you. And all that remains for me to say is it's a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.